Okay, welcome. Just see the meeting is live streamed. So welcome everyone to our online course and our workshop, A Manifesto for the Just City, which is organized by the TU Delft, but in collaboration with several universities around the world, with the UN Habitat World Urban Campaign to commemorate Urban October, and with Pakhuis de Zwijger, a cultural platform in Amsterdam that hosts activities connected to the topic of cities for all. So I'm Caroline Newton, and I'm here with my colleagues Hugo Lopez, Andres Maglione, Roberto Rocco, and Juliana Gonzalez. And together we are the members of the Center for the Just City, a center set up at the Faculty of Architecture and the Built Environment at Delft to research and debate social sustainability and spatial justice. And we are thrilled to have you here today and happy that many of you have decided to participate in our call to write a manifesto for the Just City. As Roberto already said, the event is broadcasted live on YouTube and it is being recorded for the podcast Duty of Care, the podcast on issues of the social city, of the Just City, and produced by Roberto and Hugo. And there are several episodes available, and the links of all these things will be made available in the chat. But today, if we wish to speak about the Just City, we cannot ignore the conflicts that knock at our doors. The conflicts in Ukraine, Nagorno-Karabakh, Myanmar, Darfur, Iran, Ethiopia, and more recently also Palestine and Israel. In the strongest possible terms, we condemn the attacks on innocent civilians by all parties, the indiscriminate bombing of civilian targets, and the cutting of crucial infrastructure in the region. As this humanitarian crisis unfolds, our hearts are with the affected communities. And at the same time, we are astonished at the inaction of the world governments in using diplomacy to protect vulnerable people and open and safeguard humanitarian corridors that are really needed. As scholars and as students addressing justice, we want Palestinians to live. We want Israelis to live. This life is only possible if we embrace politics, the politics of negotiation that seeks compromise, but very importantly, respect for human life and peace. Now, Roberto will take us to today's subject and our wonderful speaker.
Thanks, Caroline. In our last lecture, our guest Martine Doppen from the Dutch NGO Reclaim Fossilvrij showed us the importance of fighting false propaganda and confusing messages on fossil fuels sold to us by the industry. Martine is an example, we think, of a young activist who makes a difference by carrying out actions that highlight the hypocrisy of the fossil fuel industry and its lobby. Today's topic is about sustainability, environmental challenges, and gender by the hands of an exceptional guest, Faiza Darkhani. Faiza is a dedicated environmentalist and women's rights advocate from Afghanistan. She previously served as the director of the National Environment Protection Agency of Afghanistan and an assistant professor at Badakhshan University. She graduated from the Faculty of Design and Architecture at UMP Malaysia. Her impactful work earned her a spot on BBC's 100 Influential Women Around the World list in 2021. Currently, she continues her work as a researcher in Germany and has been actively volunteering for women's rights and environmental causes. Well, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to our speaker, Faiza. The floor is yours. You know that you have around 35-40 minutes to give us your message. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I'm excited here. And I would like to say, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody joining around the world. And I'm very excited in this event, and I'm excited to share my experiences and my works here together. So I would share my screen.
Yes, we can see it very well.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, as I mentioned, that I'm excited to discuss our work and experiences here together. In a world where our actions have far-reaching consequences on the planet and where the urgency of environmental and ecological challenges grows daily, I would invite you to embark on a journey today, a journey into the heart of ecological democracy, environmental sustainability, and transformation role of women in shaping a more sustainable future. And today we would be talking about the intersectionality of environmental justice, democratic struggles, and women's rights. I know that you have been hearing these terms often, and today we would be willing to talk about how this works and how these terms are. And within this presentation, I would like to share these outlines that I have: environmental justice, democratic struggles, women's rights, and some of my experiences and research that we have conducted in Afghanistan, and we will be sharing in this presentation. Yeah. Environmental justice. First of all, I would like to start with this term, that when you hear this term, what would you see? Like, what would you notice? What would you think of it, or what would you know about this one? So today I would like to say that environmental justice is ensuring equitable participation of individuals, regardless of their color, national origin, or income, in the creation, execution, and enforcement of environmental laws and policies. It will be achieved when everyone enjoys the same degree of protection from environment and health hazards and equal access to decision-making process to have a healthy environment in which to live, learn, work, and educate. When we say environmental justice, it should consider disability rights, children and young people rights, racial justice, gender equality, refugees and asylum seekers' rights, health, and all these things. When we say that there is environmental justice, then we have to notice that these all rights together are meet. When there is injustice, it means that these are not met. So then I would like to say that we have been saying that environmental justice. Let's just take a short look. How does it? Where did it come from? And how is the story of this environmental justice? Environmental justice is a concept that emerged in the United States during the 20th century, and the history of environmental justice can be traced within several events or several movements. Then I would like to just mention some of them, then we would go further. The history that the first it occurred was the movement occurred was civil rights movements in 1960s. In this movement, their aim was to end racial segregation and discrimination, which these movements leads to the other future movements and in United States and around the world. And even for this, since it was the first movement, the history says that even Martin Luther King, who was one of the civil rights activists, who highlighted the importance and interconnectedness of environmental justice with civil rights and civil justice. And the other was Warren County, North Carolina, in 1982. It was this movement was significant because the residents of Warren County protested against the setting of a hazardous waste landfill in their area. And this event often considered as a birth of the modern movement for environmental justice. And the third is like United Church of Christ report, which was the United Church of Christ Commission. They reported and something that they titled like Toxic Waste and Races in the United States, which documented some unequal setting of hazardous landfills in a community of people of color. So this lead to more awareness of the people regarding the environmental justice. And the other was First National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summits, which leads to having a proper principles of environmental justice. Within this movement, so many people from different communities, they got together and they had these movements to have the environmental facilities for all those types of people. And the other is executive order in 1994, which was signed by President Bill Clinton. And then after that, it got worldwide expansion. So then we could say then after that, then around the world, it gets started, the people started noticing about, okay, environmental justice is something that we have to work for it, or we have to fight for it, that people of all different communities should have these rights to have proper justice for their community. So as I mentioned, there are like around 21 principles for this environmental justice, but the importance of these principles among them are like the presentation of people, like the impacted community should be there or presented in the decision-making process. And the process, which is like planning process, the decision-making process, and everything should be transparent among the people and among the different types of people. And distribution, as we said, like environmental benefits and impacts should be equally distributed among all different types of people. So it means that principle of environmental justice is making sure nature is safe and also being respectful for different types of cultures without any racism, and teaching of the people about the environment, giving everyone this chance to have their decisions regarding their environment. So as we mentioned that when we say there are principles, so there should be importance of this environmental justice. Environmental justice importance and or like it has a very deep connection between human and environment, and it has it underscores the conserving and sharing resources, and also understanding sustainability and sharing or distribution of equitable resources among all the people. And strengthening environmental laws should be equal to all the people among different communities. So when we say that, okay, there is environmental justice, there is environmental injustice, we say that these distribution of impacts and also distribution of the benefits of environment should be even to all the people. So here are some environmental injustice examples that I would like to share with. This can be like lack of clean water access to the people, and different types of pollutions, electronic waste dumping, air pollution, oil extraction, climate change, deforestation, pesticides exposure, and also plastic waste, and so many other examples that we still have these, that the people from different communities, they are suffering from these kinds of justice. It depends on every country and every community, but there are like very huge problems among different communities. So when we say that, okay, environmental justice and environmental injustice or something which is very important for the people. So when we see changes in them, like when we see a change in environment, when we see a change in the climate, so what would happen? We have to consider this. We have to notice this. What would happen? So the research shows that there is like direct effect and indirect effects that causes to the people, especially for women and children. And these all direct and indirect infections, which is like destruction of education, negative households, coping mechanism, and different, they lead to the gender equality, conflict, and poverty. You see that whenever there is environmental injustice, there is environmental change, what it would be gender equality. So the impact of environmental injustice in women. When we say that, okay, environmental justice in women, why? Research shows that when there is something happen with the environment, with the climate, women or the people who get impacted easily or get affected easily from these types of changes. Why is so? So it shows that there is a limited access to financial resources and often low paid for women there is around the world, and there is a low income and low wages for women than men. And there is discriminatory laws that limit female workforce participations, and there is also restrictions on land ownership. There is a lack of their voices in decision making, and also there is lack of technology, and there is lack of capacity building for women. That these all causes that these are all the reasons that when something happened, women are the first vulnerable people who got affected from these changes. And the other important factor that gets affected from this environmental changes and climate change, these are children, as we said, and as the research shows that women and children and minority people, especially like and also some aged people, these are the people who gets easily impacted from these different environmental changes. As you see from here, it shows even from the low socio-economic status, from indoor air pollution or outdoor air pollution. These are the children who they get sick or who get affected easily. So now we say that, okay, environmental justice. Environmental justice is something that we have to consider. We have to see that it should be there. But would you think that it comes by itself? No, not at all. Environmental justice and whatever is when people need for whatever, they have to fight for it, they have to struggle for it. So democratic struggles are like efforts to establish, protect, and export a democracy in a political system. These struggle promotes like principles, political equality, rule of law, civil liberties, and also popular participation in the government. Suppose you see from the picture, women's suffrage movement expanded political participation and to women. It means that before, like in a centuries, the women in all the countries, they were not able to participate in voting, which like they were not considered half of the population who had to have right in decision making. So they got these struggles, they got the democratic struggles, and they fight for it, and they got their self involved. And so far now we or the women of current era, they benefit from this one. So, and moreover, that we say the role of political participation in democratic struggles. When there is like political participation in democratic struggles, then we can see that voting rights for women can be included, and also ensuring women's voices in government, and also advocating for inclusive democracy system, promoting gender equality, and these are something that that will lead to inclusion of women in these types of decision making. So this is that we can consider in order to get or to have environmental justice, especially in different communities, especially in developing countries. Democratic struggles are very essential and needed to work for it. So now we come up to the women's rights. Women's rights is a very popular topic, a very feminist topic that people around the world talk about them. But we have women around the world who are struggling for their basic rights, and they don't even have access to their basic rights. So, like the foundation of women's rights movement in the 19th century and also in the 20th century, and different types of movements started working in order for women to get access to their rights, to their basic rights, or to their needs. But still, we don't see this one. So in terms of climate change and in terms of environmental justice and women's rights, we could say that women are more vulnerable than any other people. Why is so? Because we see that, and also the research shows that there is economic disadvantages. There is this economic disadvantage. That is why when there is something happens, women are the only people who gets easily affected. Reproductive health risk. So you would see that women have different responsibilities from the men. Suppose they give birth, they get pregnant, they take care of their birds, they educate their children, and these all stuff, they are the reproductive health risks that they when something happens, these women are more vulnerable to the other people. And also longer lifespans. Some research shows that there are women who have longer lifespans than their spouses. So sometimes when their spouses they die or they pass away, then the women, they get this vulnerability, and also they won't be able to support their self for longer. That's why they are impacted very easily. And limited social options. These are some things that, but still we see that women's involvement in climate change decision-making at national, European, and also international level is still low. As I mentioned, that when we say about climate change and gender inequality, from the picture from the left, you could say that when there is a climate change, the bigger issue happens would be the gender equality or gender inequality appears. So, and also the research shows that women face greater health risks from climate change. As you see, the research showed that there is 60% of people, of women, and they got impacted from the climate change, rather than 22% of male and other people. So we see and we notice that women are the most vulnerable people in the climate changes and environmental injustice. And also the other research shows that in one analysis of 120 papers, says that women and girls often face unequal high health risk from the impact of climate change compared to men around the world. So now we have to discover that why we say that women are this much vulnerable, and so what can they do, and also what are their roles, what are their importance, and how can they participate in these kinds of activities. So we would say, like, the role of women in climate resilience and adaptation, as you see here, it says when there is an educated girl, you see a healthier, better, and educated and more financially secure families. and women's leadership for sustainable and low carbon pathways to prosperity, and improved adaptation and resilience to the effect of climate change. And like when there is women involved, you see that when there is women strengthening, that climate change adaptation would be, when there is women strengthening, the climate change adaptation would be like much possible and much easier when there is the women involvement included. So now I would say the importance of inclusive participation. We have to say, as I already mentioned, that women are half part of the population of the countries, every country, or half population of the world. When they are considered as a half population of the world, then they would work as a half responsibility, and they take half responsibility of the world for the climate adaptation. So their representation is very important. And when they participate, they enhance decision quality. When they participate in decision making and these stuff, they increase the legitimacy and trust, and they increase social cohesion, accountability, equity, and social justice. They bring more innovation. They are more resilient in adaptation. They are more. There would be more empowerment in the system when they are included, and conflict resolution, learning and education, and global cooperation. When you see that women are half part, but the responsibility is more than the half part, you could see they are like they educate their family, they educate their children, they feed their children, they educate them, and also they take care of their children. So these are responsibilities. When they educate their children in a way that they have to, in a way that the children could learn from her, the children will be someone who the community can benefit from her or him. So, but still we could say there are, as I mentioned, there are not always environmental justice around the world. We still have problems, and we have issues, environmental challenges, and democratic struggles. I would like to mention that still there is like this unequal environmental impacts around the world, even in the countries, even in the communities. There is uneven environmental impact. There is low access of information and participation of population. There is not a proper reform of legal advocacy and activism around the world. Economic equity, there is no proper and stable economic equity around the world. Health and well-being, and also collaborative solution, which is missing in especially in some developing countries, and we could say this is something missing in these countries. And policy reform, we could say that there are policies in the countries, but these policies are sometimes just remain policies. And climate justice is something which is missing in most of the countries, especially in developing countries. So now we would say like intersectionality in environmental justice. Environmental justice, as we say, climate justice brings growing challenges, including extreme events, health risks, food and water scarcity, and also livelihood threats, and also migration, cultural and related risks. Particular vulnerable groups. Who are the particular vulnerable? Female-headed households, children, person with disabilities, indigenous people, and also migrants, workers, displaced persons, women, and children. But still, we have to see that these intersectionality in environmental justice depends on geographic locations, depends on financial status, and also in socio-economic factors, and also cultural identities. These are gender and these other stuffs that root causes to the vulnerability of the people. So now we would say, okay, we have environmental justice, we have women rights justice, we have women's rights, and also we have. So what is going on? What is going on in the? What are these legal policy frameworks around the world existed? International conventions related to women's rights and the environment. There are like so many, as you notice, like Sustainable Development Goals, Paris commitments, and so many others that still exist, but we could say these are not very if we think of like worldwide, we could say it's not enough, but even if we think of countrywide, it's still like not enough for the women to have and to access for their all basic rights, to have access to the environmental justice, and also to be involved in decision making and this stuff. So now I would say, okay, still there are these legal policies frameworks going on. These people are fighting for it, but so what is the barriers that the people are facing within this topic? I would say that the challenges that people are facing is inequality and discrimination. Still, people are, and especially women are facing inequality and discrimination, lack of access to information and financial barriers, gender-based violences, and also legal and policy barriers, and inadequate representation there, cultural and social norms, and also environmental racism, economic interests, lack of access to justice, climate change impacts, environmental degradation, deforestation, lack of education, institutional barriers. These are so many barriers, the challenges that still women face in order to have access for their basic rights and to have rights to access for these rights. So these are something that we still consider that around the world, and also people are facing with these challenges. But also I would like to share something about my country and Afghanistan. Afghanistan is a country where the climate crisis and gender inequality intersects. Afghanistan is an Asian country that probably all of you have heard about this country, because it's very, sometimes gets famous because of the situation going on in the country. So it's a country that with a population of over 4 million people. So, and it's a country where the people gets impacted easily from the environmental injustice, and also climate change impacts, and these other stuff. So what we did is, when I was in Afghanistan, I worked as a National Environmental Protection Agency director there, and also I worked as an assistant professor at the university. I had worked there since from 2014 since 2021 there, and we worked in different topics like environmental protection, agriculture, and these topics. So a research that we conducted was that we wanted to see. We noticed that there in Afghanistan there is we wanted to see how the environment and also how the landscape is managed there. We wanted to see from the urban perspectives, how is it going? So what we noticed was that there was 0.69 square meter urban green spaces per capita in Kabul city. So we conducted the research, and we wanted to know what the problems are there, that in order for a country to have a proper urban green spaces, like the World Health Organization says that there should be at least 9 square meter per person, but there was 0.69 square meter. So we wanted to notice like why this is happening. we noticed that there is like lack of urban residential areas, green areas, air pollution, and people and women, lack of people and women engagement with the government, population and immigration, climate change, natural resource exploitation, insecurity, unplanned city, which we noticed that there are like more than 70% of the city is unplanned, and which causes to the declination of green spaces and green areas, which causes to environmental injustice in a city, and lack of experts and old management and maintenance system. So what we did is we conducted this research, and we came up to a system that we purposed to the local authorities and also to the academic peoples, that we wanted them to have the vision of increasing urban green spaces per capita, and also to have a specific organization or establish specific organization in order to make this vision happen, and creating a new policies that these policies can bring a change, and also a very specific planning in order to meet this vision, and some specific operations that could we suggested them some specific operations that could lead to the increase of urban green spaces in order to have environmental justice there, and have a specific have a good urban landscape management there. So this is what we did for our research for the environmental justice and urban landscape management. And as I was working there, we were working in different like online and offline webinars, and also seminars and webinars too, with the international and national local people, to pinpoint the webinar challenges, and also to know what are the environmental challenges exist in the country. And moreover, I worked with different types of people. One of our core value of our work was empowering women for environmental protection. As you see here, I'm talking to the women in order to raise their awareness regarding their role in environmental protection and environmental conservation. The core point that I was working was environmental protection, climate change, sustainable development, women empowerment, environmental justice, and these other stuff. And moreover, I was, like you could see here, I worked with high-ranking individuals on environmental protection and women's rights. You see here that we worked very close to the with the high-ranking governmental people, with the local authorities, to create new policies, to work for better environment, and also to protect the environment in a better way. And we were hoping, and we planned to have a very big achievement, probably in 5 or 10 years, and it was going very, very well, that we were able to achieve our goals, and it was going very good. We were able to do academic work. We were able to work with the social media. Like one of my like everyday work was talking in a social media, especially with the radios, with the TVs, and these stuff to have them, or make them, especially the women, aware of their rights and their importance of their involvement in the environment. But I would suddenly and unfortunately sadly say that it didn't happen what we wanted to do, and unfortunately the destination took us in a different way, and our mission led in a different way. So from this picture, you could see that now we were able to bring the women to the community, and we were able to empower the women, and we were empowering them, and they were engaging in different activities, especially from the from the before 2021, you could see like women are everywhere, where women are at home, where in the environment, where women are at parks, where our women are in a public, and women are in a social media, and everywhere they were doing, and their engagement and also their decision making were increasing. But unfortunately, when the regime changed and when the Taliban took over the power, you could see a changes here. A changes here that women women came to stay home, and women little by little they stopped and limit the women to go and to be in the public. They limited them from being in the public, and they limited them to work. But nowadays, you see, we are almost here. But now, when they took over the power, the first thing that they could do is they banned the women and the girls' education, and they banned the women and girls' employment. And they even, you could, I need to say this, you could believe that they even banned women going to park. They are not allowed anymore to go to park and stay there for their recreational. So now women are obliged to stay at home. But we could see that all the efforts that we put for like years there, they are like useless. They are just gone and they are just lost. So now we noticed from here, you could see that this is the way, and this was earlier when we were working there, and then the students and the girls were able to go to school and to participate in their classes. But this is the class now where girls are not allowed to go to school, and they are the education for girls are like banned, and this is a class with empty students. So now I could say that when we say that, okay, women's rights, environmental justice, democratic struggles, these three are interconnected to each other, then if the people wanted to have the environmental justice, they have to struggle for it. But let's talk about it. In a country where women are not allowed to struggle for it, how can they do that? When they are not allowed to work for themselves, how educate themselves, how can they work for environmental justice? How can they work for women's rights and these stuff? So now Afghanistan is the only country where half part of the population is considered not as a population. So half other part is working, and we don't know where it will go. So this is something that currently happening in the country. And when they took over the power, we were able to we lift the country. But it is very hard for the girls who are working there, who are living there without any fate, without any destination. So overall, I would suggest some solutions and some strategies. So these solutions, as I mentioned, that when we say legal reforms, we still have legal reforms internationally or worldwide, but let's consider this from countrywide. We see that from in every country there are different problems that women cannot take part. So when in order to have environmental justice, women's rights, and also democratic engagement, education awareness, capacity building, access to information, community mobilization, representation, gender perspective policy, elimination of gender-based violences, inclusive governance, and also environmental justice assessments, collaboration and partnership, climate adaptation and mitigation, resource allocation and also empowerment progress, institutional reforms, research and data collection, and also advocacy and activism. These are something needed for all countries in order to have proper women's rights and also environmental justice. So from the conclusion, I could say that for the environmental justice, if we advocate for equal environmental protection policies, then we would be definitely having environmental justice, or promote sustainable, fair resource management, raise awarenesses of environmental inequality. For the democratic engagement, encourage democratic participation for environmental influence, advocate for transport and accountable decision-making in the countries, and promote diverse voices in environmental policies. For the women's rights, like champion women's right for resilience, advocate for gender-inclusive climate responses, and promote women's environmental leadership when we want to have these three interconnectedness. So from the takeaway, I could say that we have to, if we want to have environment, we have to recognize that the environmental justice, democratic engagement, and women's rights are interconnected and to each other. And when something missed, then the other parts would definitely will not be achievable. So mobilize individuals, communities, governance, take collective action towards sustainable, equitable, and just future. It should be from the local perspective, and also from the bigger perspective or international perspectives, that all the women around the world can have access to their rights and live in peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Faiza. That was a very powerful message you gave us. It's you made it super clear how we cannot have a healthy and environmentally sound world if there's not a democratic process in place, that when there's not a democratic system, and where women play an important role. So I think a big round of applause from everyone. It's very difficult to do it in a virtual setting, but thank you so much. I see there's already some question in the chat, but I want to ask you something, because when you showed the solutions and the strategies, like the legal reforms, the issues of education and so on, these are all things that we often, like when we teach or when we think about visions and ideas for change, these all come up. But how would you, can you give us a clue of how you can take it to the daily practice, let's say, because that was something you were also really involved in Afghanistan, when you showed the pictures of how you work together with women's groups and so on. So I'm curious, how did you do that, and what can we learn from that?
I would say that in a previous regime, it was possible. Well, it was possible. Like we were the people who were when I was working as the lead of environmental protection, I was able to be a bridge between people and also between the government somehow. In that time, I also was aware of the problem from the people, and also I was aware of the government policies and how they are managing. So for this, we were able to to conduct meetings with the local authorities and also with the people to hear their voices and make what they wanted and what they needed in the country or in the community. But nowadays I don't see that exactly, especially in the country, because not all voices are heard, and it is something it's something impossible to employ in the country.
Thank you. Roberto, I see you have your hand up. You're muted.
Yes. Thank you so much, Faiza, for your presentation. The situation in Afghanistan, I think, presents us with some really unsolvable, maybe unsolvable problems. And one of them I would like to ask you is, you seem to claim, I think in your talk, for a global democracy, right? I think we all want that, maybe a global democracy, but how possible is that? And some people would say, well, other countries cannot interfere in Afghanistan, and if they do, they are infringing on its sovereignty. So how do you see this problem? How do we solve that problem? Can we, should there be interference in Afghanistan, or where do we go? I know my question is unfair.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. This is a question sometimes I also think, like, why the world is silent?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because when we probably some people who like who speaks Farsi, who I would say a quote that Bani Adam azai yak digarand, which means that people are like parts of each other. Human beings of parts of each other. But when we see one part is suffering, like why the rest of the world, they just stay silent? Also, this is a question for me. I think, yes, definitely the world can't interfere. Our country, as you see, when there is someone can't like be stable without a family, it can be the same with the country. When there is a country who is not supported with the rest of the countries, definitely they won't be able to stable for a longer time. I think definitely the world should interfere, and the world should do something for this country in order to avoid. You see, we have like 40 million people there, and around 20 million people are women, and we can just neglect this issue. It's not fair.
So you're saying that whenever we see injustice, we should act, right? There are some injustices that are so clear that we should act. Is that what you're saying?
I couldn't hear. I think it got freezed.
Sorry. I think you are telling us, if I may, that whenever there is a glaring injustice, a very clear injustice, we should act. But still, it's quite difficult to decide who decides what is unjust and what is. I'm playing, as you can see, I'm playing devil's advocate. I don't believe that we should stay silent, but I'm just playing devil's advocate, thinking it's very difficult to act.
Yeah, if I got your question,
Mm-hmm.
because it's just, if I got your question, yeah, it seems to be difficult to act, but I noticed that there, like around the world, people are not in peace, like from Palestine, from Israel, from all around Ukraine and other worlds. But still, I mean, when there is something happening, the world shouldn't be silent, and they could consider. Nowadays, I noticed that, like the countries and also the very powerful countries, they just stay silent or act or they take very small steps to show the world that we are doing something for these countries. But it's just something to show. But I don't see that very, very impactful, because you see now it's already more than 2 years, that the women are banned from schools. And how can you cope this?
Thanks. Of course, we want to hear from everyone. So if you have a question, there are some questions in the chat. But Nima, since you raised your hand, please state your question, then we will go to the chat.
Thank you so much, Roberto. And thank you, Faiza John, for your very influential talk. It's maybe a personal question, because like coming from Iran, we have like lots of similarities, especially in our history and our literature, for sure. I would like to ask you that with this, I mean, it's a personal question. Maybe it's not good for now. It's good for the like end of discussion. But facing or struggling with this fragility or vulnerable societal vulnerability that we have in our countries, in which we passed some, let's say, imposed period of liberal or like democratic kind of, not democratic, but liberal periods for especially women. How do you irrigate sprouts of hope in yourself as an influential woman to keep on going to work for women in Afghanistan as an individual?
Yeah, it's, to be honest, it's very, very, very hard. It's very hard. I'm here still. I'm like financially stable. I have my own life here, whatever. But all my heart is there, and I think about them like 24/7. The only things that I could do is like sometimes I raise my voice, and I do, but this is something I could do. But yeah, to be honest, but most of the time when it's out of my control, then I take it personal. I say like, oh yeah, what's happening? Yeah, I have family there who are suffering the same. And also I have people who are close to my heart. And those are, but what I could do is just when I can't do anything, as an individual, I take it personal and I can't do anything. Yeah.
Okay, maybe it's a very difficult question. Maybe we can try some questions from the chat. Nezapi is asking if there is any data about women working as urban planners and environmentalists in Afghanistan before Taliban took over. Do you know if there were lots of women working in planning?
Yeah, I could say that in all the country, in all the governmental regimes and these stuff, there was like slowly or gradually changes that we could say in all these governmental urban planners and the urban planning staffs and these stuff. We had about 30% of engagement of women somehow, 30% and less than that. And somehow between 30% or 25% for all these working and also being environmentalist, working in a democracy, on working in the government and these stuff. But currently it's zero.
Okay, Miluza, would you like to make a statement because you have a statement here, or are we happy reading it on the chat? Is not yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Hi.
I think I could just. Hi. Yes. Well, I think I could just repeat why I wrote. I was just saying that this actually speaks very deeply about how many forms of discrimination today we're talking about gender more particularly, but many forms of discrimination, namely race and so on, can enhance injustices in our societies. So I was just wondering if Faiza could talk a little bit about the tension we see between this global awareness and local, as she mentioned, cultural norms that we see, especially in developing contexts I'm more familiar with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would you mean that the global awareness from the developing perspective, developing countries, global awareness, or global awareness from developing countries?
I mean, this global awareness regarding rights, women rights, as you presented, and this, like your experience, but we've seen many more. And then you mentioned that one of the barriers, I mean, you indicated the cultural norms as one of the barriers to actually realize these rights in certain contexts. So I wonder if you could elaborate on that.
Yes, I would say it from my own experience, like from my own country. Nowadays, we say, as you mentioned, that the global awareness regarding the human rights, everybody knows that human rights or women's rights are something need to be considered in every country and every community. But from cultural perspectives, from my country, when you go to the country and you see the people say, it is our culture that the women should stay at home. It's the culture. It's a kind of like our bravery that we want women to stay home. We feed them. It's okay. And they can bring children and they can raise up the children for us. This is a cultural barrier. And this is really like 100% something doable, especially in my country, that they take it as a culture barrier, that they don't allow women to go to education and go to like other all activities.
Anyone wants to react to that? I think that's a very interesting point.
Here I got a question like, and girls still be homeschooled? For the girls, yeah, it depends, but like somebody can make a like collection of their family, they can teach them, but it's very unofficial, or it is not something that would get an outcome.
I would also invite people to imagine that homeschooling is not always possible everywhere. When a mother has to take care of the whole household and the father is working out, homeschooling is a very particular form of education, which is, by the way, very problematic in my view. But Nezapi, would you like to ask your question about the traditional forms of permitted women's engagement? Because it's quite a lengthy question.
Yes, thank you, Roberta, and thank you, Faiza, for your presentation, which is quite moving. I asked the question because you raised the question of cultural norms, and I'm thinking of cultural norms in the traditional society in parts of West Africa, for example. Where looking at Nigeria and the southwestern part, in traditional society, men were farmers or craftspeople for the most part, and women were traders. So some were, crafts women as well, in terms of, making fabrics, that sort of thing. But that was a form of economic activity that was kind of endorsed by society for women. And a lot of women used that avenue to develop themselves and their children to actually become quite wealthy, through trade. And till today, you go to the markets in West Africa, and the markets are run by women. They hold really sort of powerful trading and sort of business positions due to that kind of historical endorsed activity. And I just wondered, in the short term, whether there were comparable routes or avenues in the Afghan society, where it was recognized, that women were, the sort of leaders, or it was considered to be okay, just as a means to, well, in the short term, raise morale, so that people aren't sitting at home feeling really, really bad about themselves and feeling that they can do nothing. And then perhaps, start to use those avenues to sort of get together and, have some sort of mobilization that gives them that kind of collective strength. I know it's not, it's not the ideal, but, thinking, what can be done short term, medium term, and long term. Obviously, the medium and long term ideal would be, to change the current situation, completely. But if that isn't happening, and there's little prospect of that happening in the short term, what are the
sorry, if you if you could conclude. So
yes, I'm concluding.
Uh-huh.
I'm concluding. Yes, so yeah, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, okay. If there's anything local, yeah.
I would say that, yeah, these are the cultural norms that differentiate between different countries. Suppose these things earlier, as you mentioned, in Africa, it was something that the people were engaged in order to make money or to for their livelihood. Something earlier, I could say it was the same also in the country, in my country, but not anymore. But they suggest the woman to stay at home and take care of the children. So, but for me, as you asked for the solution, what would happen in a long time, and currently I don't see any very urgent solution, as I don't see very much positive positivity there. So I would say that the long-term solution would be the world interfere something that could happen, because otherwise I believe, and also I'm sure, that it will keep going the same for years and years and years without any change. But I think the only solution would be the world interference to don't let them, that the half part of the country and also the women, they are just suffering from a bad politic that they are going on. This is the only possible way that I can think of now.